Good morning. Today, I have Miss Mary Blanchard on the Thriving Through Trials show, which is a show that's dedicated to bringing hope and inspiration to those facing debilitating or potentially debilitating diseases and challenges. I'm Dr. Samantha Benjamin Allen, board certified in physical medicine and rehabilitation, and founder of Freedom Wellness Physiatry, a direct specialty rehabilitation consulting practice serving the DMV in the home setting. In this show, we'll be shining a light on remarkable individuals who have not just survived, but thrived beyond their circumstances. We'll be exploring their journeys, their resilience, and the strategies they've used to regain mobility, independence, improve their quality of life, and function. Our goal is to empower, encourage, and motivate you, our viewers, and provide a source of inspiration in the face of adversity. Join us as we uncover stories of triumph and learn how to thrive through life's toughest trials. So today I welcome Mary Blanchard. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. And it's definitely a topic that I identify with. I was working in an office, being an office manager, when all of a sudden I took ill, and I certainly was not prepared for it at all. Um, so uh, just being able to share my story and help other people really aligns with how I'm moving forward and thriving today.
Awesome. And I did not mention when I started, but today's episode is entitled Thriving with B-cell lymphoma and brain tumor. So Ms. Blanchard is going to talk to us today about her journey through that experience and kind of how it started and where
Yeah.
she's today and the journey, in between. So my first question actually is, what was your starting symptom that indicated something was wrong, or how did you first get to the diagnosis?
Well, I actually had a long route to get to my diagnosis of the B-cell lymphoma. And it actually started earlier in the year. It began in 2023. Well, I think it really began in 2022.
Okay.
But I had another illness first that they believe was actually a symptom of the B-cell lymphoma. So in January, I got hospitalized, and I was having the oddest of symptoms and things that were something that, things that people every single day struggle with,
Hmm.
maybe sleep or appetite, or, I didn't actually feel sick. And so I felt different, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I felt a little more lethargic.
Hmm.
I felt like I wasn't sleeping as well. I felt like my appetite wasn't the same. And so the little things you figure they just don't mean anything.
Hmm.
And I also worked with a holistic practitioner. And so she was picking up on other things. And so we were trying to work on things together. And when it came down to it in January, by January, I really couldn't sustain my life anymore. All of a sudden, I was getting these tremors where I could not write. I could not barely use my phone.
Hmm.
And so a friend of mine took me to the doctor, to the hospital. They took me to one of those,
Like an urgent care?
urgent care type
Uh-huh.
place. And so they immediately went like, you need to go to the ER. And so we went to the ER, and they ran all kinds of tests and could find nothing wrong with me at all. And so they were like, go back home. My friend, thank God, was like, obviously you cannot go home alone.
Right.
So I went home with them, and the next day I was like, I cannot sustain my life here. And my friend came home, and he was like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I think I'm crashing. And he's
Hmm.
like, I don't know what that means. And I said, I think I'm dying. And of course, he was immediately like, oh my God. He's like, do I take you to the hospital? Because we
Yeah.
live very close to a hospital, or call 911. And he and I
Mhm.
have both times said, call 911. And so they were there immediately and took me to the hospital. It took them about a month
Uh-huh.
to discover that I
Wow.
had a rare virus. They call it HLH. And so it's very rare. I happened to be in a hospital that had the one specialist of the state.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was Mayo Clinic they brought in, and they thought that they gave it a, like a 70%. They thought this was what I had, this virus called HLH. And so they did chemo for me. My friends and family were like, oh no,
Yeah.
this is not her path. Like, this is not, she's not going to do chemo. And, they were like, we don't think so. And,
Uh-huh.
they were like, what else can we do? And the doctor's like, basically, this is all we have. So my family was actually brought in like 3 times to say goodbye to me. They did not think I would survive this.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so they were like, while this is 70% we think
Mm-hmm.
what has happened, this is the only recourse we have. Because every test result came back basically normal, of nothing. I had internal bleeding. They couldn't find it. They did, endoscopies, colonoscopies. I was ballooning up. I
Uh-huh.
was retaining fluids. I had fevers they couldn't get rid of. I had seizures. I was in AFib. I had all kinds of things going wrong with me,
Yeah, it sounds like
but
your body was
nothing
shutting down.
pointed
That's,
to what the issue was.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
scary. And
So,
tell me,
yeah,
quick question. After you were diagnosed with the HLH, thankfully you were in a hospital where there was a specialist who
yeah,
knew what that was. So I guess it was a good thing that you went there. But
yeah.
the question I have is kind of what was going through your mind when you received that diagnosis? Because I know sometimes, from what I've heard some people say, the thought has a lot to do with what
Mm,
transpires after in terms of how you deal with it, how you recover,
right.
how you handle the hardships of the
Hmm.
process to get where you are. I mean, today, sitting here talking to me at
Yeah.
home. So, what was going through your mind when you started
I have
experiencing
to
this?
say, at that time, I was really out of it. And I was very unaware. I was unaware of the diagnosis. I
Hmm.
had no idea what was going on.
Hmm.
It wasn't until, like I said, I was hospitalized in January. It wasn't until March 8th that I really realized that I'd been in the hospital.
Oh,
Even though
wow.
I was aware and talking,
Hmm.
I had so much inflammation, and I thought I was participating and I was making decisions and talking with people and, friends and family. And, but I really did not know what was going on at all. On March 8th, a friend of mine came into the hospital room and said, so, how was chemo? And I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't have chemo.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, what? I mean, now here I am. I don't know what chemo is. I don't know if, I don't know how it's administered. I don't know if it's a pill, if you go somewhere, if it's a drug. I don't know. I've never experienced any of this. And so he said, well, the nurses just left. I was just talking with them. They were just here. And so he goes, take a look at the whiteboard across the hall. I mean, across the wall there.
Hmm.
And I looked and I was like, hey, it says March 8th. And he
So
said,
you had no idea what time you were
yeah,
even in.
no, because he had first asked me, how long do you think you've been here?
Right.
I was thinking a few days, but I thought, the way he asked that, maybe a couple of
Maybe
weeks, I
longer. Yeah.
said, yeah.
Hmm.
And so when I looked across and saw, oh, it's March, my first connection was, it's spring. I
Hmm.
came in winter. And he
So all
goes,
this time you
yeah,
suffered a lot of cognitive decline from this
Hmm.
inflammation and memory loss, and it sounds like
Yeah.
some delirium. So,
Yes.
um, between this virus and the finding of B cell lymphoma,
Mhm.
you were hospitalized all this time. What happened to your,
So,
yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask what happened
yeah.
to your body
So,
physically?
yeah, the hospital basically kicked me out in
Hmm.
March, I think it was like March 18th, March 17th, to go to rehab. And I could not walk. I could not do for myself at all. I did not have upper body strength either. So I couldn't lift myself. They had to use the lift to get you in and out
Yeah.
of the hospital bed. And I knew I wanted to get up and participate, but it was so painful. And so I really did not want to participate. And so the fact that they are now like, oh, okay, now you're leaving today
And now
and
you have
going
to
to
come do all
rehab.
this work.
Yeah. And I remember looking across the room at the sink and thinking, I can't even imagine what it will take me to be able to get to the sink.
Uh-huh. It
How can
was,
I go to rehab?
you
Like,
were
I
feeling
just don't
so weak. Yeah.
understand. Yeah. And so, I really am glad that, that is the process that, they are there to save your life. They're done with that part of it. So now it's you got
Yeah.
to go figure out how to get moving again.
Right.
And so the day I got into rehab, and it was a nursing home rehab facility, and um I had to start figuring out, like, what is the life that I want to lead? And I knew it was not in a bed. This
Right.
was not the life I wanted to lead.
Hmm.
And so having their help of them being able to have two people pick me up and put me in a wheelchair and wheel me down to the gym to start figuring out. I remember the very first day when they got me in the wheelchair, and they were trying to figure out, can they get me onto another machine? How can I move from the wheelchair and, use some of my own body? I couldn't. And even them trying to put the slide board down, and I was like, oh my God, I can't shimmy. I don't
Yeah.
have a shimmy in
You
me.
lost a
I
lot
have the
of
strength.
muscle strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I thought, okay, wow, this is seeing them trying to figure out and refigure out, can we do this? Can we do that? And every turn it was like, nope, 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 like this doesn't work. And so I had to keep trusting in them that they would find a way and that they would be able to incrementally get me there. And I remember they kept saying, do you want to try this? And I'm like, you know what? Take out, do I want to? Because I will. Whatever you present me with, I am here. I know I cannot want my recovery more than you. So I know I have to do the work, but you need to give me the tools. So
Yeah. So you're
whatever
like,
tool
let's
you
just
think,
do it. Just let's
yeah,
do it. Don't ask me. Let's do it.
right.
That's the
Don't ask.
mindset.
Let's
That's the
just
mindset
do, you
you
know?
have to have in rehab. And I'm gonna interject quickly because you said something very key, which I think a lot of people go through when they experience a very challenging and life-altering experience or diagnosis that's just left them significantly debilitated, and their function has declined so drastically. When they're in that place, it looks crazy for a hospital to send you out. And a lot of people
Yeah.
get upset. And I actually
Oh,
have a
yeah.
friend who experienced this. Unfortunately, her daughter had a massive stroke, and she had been conversing with me, and she was very upset. And she said they're sending her to rehab, and she can't even talk. And I had to reassure her. And I said, rehab is the best place for her to go. They have handled her acute issues. Her blood pressure is
Mhm.
stable now. There's no infections that they're treating. So as long as she is stable from that standpoint, they're not going to be offering her anything. And she's going to be laying in that bed and
Right.
declining, getting skin wounds because the blood is not
Mhm.
circulating. She's not moving her body. Just trust the process.
Yeah.
So you said something key there because once you start moving, things start to shift. So I'm really happy to hear, about your experience and how it started clicking once you got
Right.
there. This is not how I want to
Yeah.
live. And you made a decision about how you wanted to live, and that helped to motivate you each day to do what you had
Right.
to do, even though you didn't really want to. Because let's face it, when you're
Yeah.
down in the dumps and you feel so weak, and somebody's telling you to get up and try this and try, you're like, leave me alone. Do I look like I
I
can even lift my
know.
finger right now?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah,
But thank you for your
exactly.
transparency in that because it's a true experience for a lot of people.
It is.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in the hospital and, I couldn't open up anything or what, and having somebody help me and do things, I was so grateful.
Hmm.
And then there crossed that moment that I felt like, well, this would just be nice if people would just do everything for me, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Which has never been my MO. I have
Uh-huh.
always been the person that I am the problem solver. I fix everything,
Uh-huh.
And so when I had that moment of thought, like, gosh, it's just, I don't want to do anything
Yeah.
anymore.
Hmm.
I realized, like, oh, people need to stop helping me.
Yeah.
I need to cut
Because if
myself
you're gonna
off.
get back to where you want to be,
Yeah.
you got to do the
Yes,
work, and that's the key.
exactly.
But that support is major. You can do it by yourself, obviously. So,
Right.
God
No.
bless all of the therapists and the staff that was working with you. And I see us in our field as more of the guiding light to show you what's already in you. We're not
Yeah.
we're not doing it for you. We're just helping you to see
Right.
what's already in there and
Right.
helping you to bring that out and encourage you and motivate you to keep taking those steps forward, to keep building
Hmm.
on that foundation so you can get to a
Yeah.
place where you're functioning again. And like
Right.
you said, there are some people who get to that thought. It's like, this is nice to have everybody do everything for me. I'm
Yeah.
trying to give up.
Very
And
seductive.
yeah, it's a little tempting thought that comes in.
Hmm.
But if you really want to get to a place where you are thriving again and living your life with purpose, it's very key what you said. That decision you made. I don't want to live
Hmm.
my life like this. I have to start taking action to get towards the life I want to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's especially hard when you don't know if you still have the connection. You don't know if your brain is still connected to move your limbs,
Right.
and I've always been a very visual person.
Mhm.
And so I was working with I think it was the PT guy, and he was talking about sliding your feet in and out. I'm like, I can't. Like, how is that my exercise? I can't,
Mhm.
And so he was like, visualize it first, and move what can move if there
Right.
is any movement. If
Right.
there's not, visualize it.
Yep.
And so my heel, I could move out. And then he's like, okay, so if you've moved your heel out, move your toe to meet it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay. And so he's like, move it back and then move it back. And he's like, that's your slide. And I'm
And
like,
that's major. That's a big win at that point. It sounds small,
wow.
but that's a huge win. And that's how it
Yeah.
starts. Visualization it's a major component of recovery. And I think we underestimate the power of the mind-body connection. But
Hmm.
that's where the neural pathways start to redevelop. And you're forming those pathways to perform an action that you've done in the past and have
Hmm.
lost the ability to or have forgotten to, but it's still there. And you just have
Yeah.
to start with those little things. Visualization is something we even encourage in spinal cord injury people who are paralyzed. And
Hmm.
they're like, what's the point of doing this? They told me I'm not going to walk again. I say, just do it because you
Yeah.
never know what you're activating when you do that. And you wouldn't have known that you could have done that heel slide
Right.
had you not visualized it and just started with that. It just takes a twitch, and then we can
Yeah.
start working on that. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
As long as you start to see it or feel it or visualize something,
Hmm.
there is some link that's still there,
Right.
then you've got hope to build on that.
Exactly.
And it's amazing. And it's such a lift to have that moment of, oh my God, my body
It's moving.
remembers,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know?
Uh-huh.
it's that gave me everything. I thought, oh, I can do anything now.
Yes.
There is no stopping me in my recovery. This will happen no
Yeah.
matter
And
what.
you did it. And you did it.
Yeah.
And I'm so honored to be speaking to you because you came through a lot. Let's touch on the brain tumor that you told me about. At what point in your diagnosis or kind of going through this journey did they
Yeah.
discover a tumor? Was that in the beginning? Was that later when you started expressing some cognitive changes and things weren't
hmm
quite connecting? When did that show up?
So I got home from rehab in May and I was using a walker and a cane and I was doing some rehab at home. I thought I was doing great. Um, I didn't realize probably around June that I was starting to decline again,
Mm.
but I didn't see it and I didn't feel it. I thought I was living my best life.
Hmm.
And so thank God I have friends around me who know me very well. I've had
Hmm.
some friends from, childhood. I've had friends from, my 20s that happen to live in the area still. I have, friends from the last, 15, 16 years that I'm very close
Oh,
with.
wow. That's
Yes.
great. You
So,
maintain your connections. That's a
right.
good thing.
Yes. And I was
Yeah.
always one, I kept all my friend groups kind of separate. I
Hmm.
didn't, intermingle them.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky
Hmm.
that I experienced the HLH first,
Hmm.
um, because I was never a person to ask for help ever. I would
Uh-huh.
not do that. I was the person that helped everybody else.
Yeah.
I was the person that fixed things and, just dove in and took care of things. And so all of a sudden, I got taken out of my life with HLH,
Yeah.
and my friends gathered in and they all took over and started doing something. They all kind of pieced it together. Somebody was driving my car, somebody was getting my mail, somebody was checking on my mother, and
Hmm.
she was at an assisted living facility. And so there were just people that would just come in and help out. And I would
That's so
never asked
wonderful.
for it.
That's so
Yeah.
wonderful. So you actually didn't ask. They just stepped up to the plate.
No, no, no.
Wow.
Yeah, there was no waiting to be asked
Wow.
because
You
I
are
was out.
special because I don't
Hmm.
know a lot of people who have friends like that. At least for both of you, you'd have to ask and cross your fingers and hope they'll say yes.
Right. Well, you know what? I disagree with that. I think we all have people like that in our lives that when push comes to shove, people just show up.
Yeah.
The
I hear you.
universe
I hear you.
brings you what you need, and the universe has been setting me up. I will be 59 next month. The universe had been setting me up for
Preparing
58
you for this.
years
Uh-huh.
for these people to be in my life
Yeah.
and come around and support, because it took a village, it took a tribe, it
Yeah.
took lots and lots of people to come together.
Right.
Illness does not happen in a vacuum. You feel like it is only happening to you, and you are the one going through everything and suffering and, putting in all the effort. It never happens in a vacuum. It is never when you are alone. You are always being
Always.
carried.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
always.
That is
So my
profound.
friends
Yes.
around me started kind of talking to each other then, going, did you notice this? Did
Hmm.
you hear that? Did you see like Mary was like leaning, or did you hear like a word? Was that slurred, or was her speech slower? Did she drop something? They started kind of
So they were
comparing
noticing the
notes.
cues here that something wasn't right.
Yeah. And because they knew me and they know how I process and all of that, they were close enough to the situation to be able to really step in. So in August, then I started having debilitating headaches. A
Mm.
long time ago, I used to get sinus headaches. I mean, sinus infections with very severe sinus headaches, like migraines.
Uh-huh.
And I was very concerned. And so a friend took me to the doctor, And unfortunately, my doctor was out of town, my GP. And so I didn't know the doctor who was seeing me, and he had never heard of HLH. You know, it's a
Mhm.
rare virus. Most doctors don't know about it. Most people have never heard of it, you know. So I couldn't fault him for either thing.
Uh-huh.
But I had my friend who'd known me almost my entire life as my advocate there to speak.
On your
And so I
behalf,
had to
yes.
tell him, I said, I know you don't know me, but this is a person that knows me, has known me practically since birth.
Mhm.
And she is the one person that would know if there's a difference. So you have to listen to what she says. And he was like, all right, we need to get MRI, CAT scan, x-rays and stuff. So we got them set up. The first availability was September 11th.
Good for you.
And my friends were so upset. Like, it's too long to wait. These
Yeah.
are two.
Hmm.
And so I still had a chat with my old work group, my old management team. The three of us would always chat and messenger back and forth. And I put something in there, and one of them responded, like, and he lives in Maryland. I live in Virginia. And he responded, hey, Mary, are you okay?
Hmm.
And the other person on the chat happened to be out of town in Rhode Island, but he normally just lived across the street from me.
Hmm.
And he replied back, get her to the hospital immediately. And I was like, oh, like
Yeah.
something's going on here.
Yeah.
And so they took me in, and the first thing they did do was, well, I don't know. Timelines become very fuzzy for me now. But they discovered a mass on my brain. And I thought, oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
That's that's not good. And then they did a brain biopsy to discover what it was. And so it was CNS lymphoma, central nervous system lymphoma, B cell. And I only just recently found out that for lymphoma to produce a tumor in the brain is very rare. There's about 1,000 cases a
Hmm.
year with a brain tumor. And so now I knew I had the fight of my life. This is when I knew, like, I need to step in now. I
Hmm.
am aware, and I'm not out of it like the last time, even though I felt like I'd been kidnapped for the second time in a year, out of my
Yeah. Like,
life, and
oh,
I'm
here we
in the
go again.
hospital,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
I couldn't believe it. There was this devastating moment of like, oh my God, I have to do this all over again.
Yeah.
And now with something that I've heard of,
Yeah.
this is that word you don't want to say. You don't want to say cancer or lymphoma, or I don't even know what it means, but I was scared of it. And
Hmm.
I had just spent months and months in the hospital, and I thought, wow, like how can I do this?
Again. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I realized I need everybody's help. I need people to come together and support me through this. So I'm grateful that it happened the way it did, because now I knew the value of being able to ask for help. And
Yeah.
I knew my friends were going to rally to do what they could. And I knew I needed to allow them to show up in the way that they could. And take myself out of the way, because I had always blocked people from that, of
Yeah.
showing up in my life in that way. And now it's like, I not only wanted it, but I needed it. I needed
Yeah.
people to show up for me and take over and do some things. And I knew it was going to be the fight of my life. And I kind of did what I've learned in business.
Uh-huh.
And in business, I learned that when people would call in and ask me for help for something they wanted to do, they wanted a contract for something, I realized that I'm the expert in
Hmm.
my field,
Hmm.
that I don't want to just do what they say I want to ask them the questions to get them to where they want to go,
Uh-huh.
because they don't have the expertise that I do. So they are asking for something that might lead them down a completely different path. And so then they
Right.
would get there and go, so why am I here? And I would
Hmm.
be like, well, that's what you asked for. So
Right,
I
but sometimes we ask for
realized
things
that,
that actually aren't what we need because we don't know what we need. That's why
right,
the
exactly.
expert
Yes.
exists. Yeah.
Yes.
And now
So
you're an
I
expert
always,
on, it sounds like you've gleaned so much wisdom on the fact, really, that we are not alone.
mhm,
But even for me, I'm a helper by nature, so I don't like asking for help. And I
yeah,
think I sometimes just tell myself, "Oh, nobody's gonna want to do that, or nobody's gonna." So then, so
I
then I feel
know.
like, oh, I don't want to ask
Mhm,
anybody. But you're right.
yeah.
You're right. As you're talking, I can hear the wisdom you've gained through this experience, and that's
Mhm.
priceless, really,
It is.
because it's shown you so much about the friends that you keep and
Mhm.
yourself
Yeah.
and your power and your ability and
Yeah. Your
how
mindset.
and mindset
Mhm.
and really how we function in community.
Mhm.
That's the best way to live. And
Right.
I'm just so happy to hear you had such a great support system, or you have such a great support system. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
truth be told, I have worked with some people who they've called people and they just don't show up.
Mhm.
So, and it's really sad. Yeah.
I agree. And I know we are all energy, and so your energy comes in before everything else.
Hmm.
And so that's why I always try to keep a very positive mindset. But I was always a person that I didn't think I had community. I
Yeah.
didn't think I had, a tribe of people.
Hmm.
I had no idea how people would step up and come forward. Um, I was sitting in the hospital. A friend of mine had set up a not a GoFundMe, a Caring Bridge site.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh, so people could sign up for different
yeah, so people
responsibilities.
could,
Yeah.
yeah, see what was going on and get updates and all of
Hmm.
that. And so when I was in the hospital one time, I looked at the Caring Bridge site to see, because friends of mine would read stuff. They would come into the hospital, oh, look what somebody said or posted or
Hmm.
whatever. This was our update today. And I'd go, wow, really? That's what happened today? I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so there was a page called Wishes or something like that. And I was like, what
Uh-huh.
the heck is that? And so I clicked on it, and it was people wishing you well.
Hmm.
And I sat there and looked through it, and there were people from childhood and people I'd worked with and hadn't seen in 20 or 30 years, and making comments and saying what I meant to them. And it hit me that we are so unaware of our impact on other people's lives, the
Right.
good, the bad, the ugly.
All of
You
it. Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, I had no idea that I had had any impact on anybody's life. People would be describing a scenario, Mary did this or whatever, and I thought, so what?
Yeah, but
But
everything
it
matters.
meant something.
Everything matters. Yes.
It mattered,
So, and it comes back full circle because even though you weren't aware that you were making an
Yeah.
impact, now those well wishes, I believe when we put those into the universe, and for people call it different things. Sometimes people will pray well over somebody, or they'll just speak well about someone, but it reaches to where you are,
Yeah.
and it helps you through your season, whether you know it's happening or not. But
Yeah.
those well wishes are helping to carry you. So
They are.
that is just so wonderful.
I
Unfortunately, we
still to
are
this
short on
day,
time.
yeah,
So
I
I
come
just wanted
across
to,
people who have, prayed for me or sent me good vibes or whatever it
right.
is. I meet friends of friends of friends, and they feel like they have this connection. And
Hmm.
so I'm like, wow, really?
Yeah, but it matters. That's why we have to be intentional about being kind to others and,
Yeah.
you know, taking a moment to just pause. Sometimes we're just so busy in our own lives and
Hmm.
all that's going on, we have difficulty seeing people, but to feel seen is
Yeah.
so impactful. And I believe those people you're speaking of felt seen, in your presence, even though you didn't know it was doing anything.
Right.
And in turn, they wished well for you when you were going through one of the most challenging times of your life, and it helped to carry you, whether you were aware of it or not.
Right.
So
Yes.
that's just a wonderful blessing of life, I see.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted to ask you what your lesson or take-home message you'd like to share with our listeners would be, and give you an opportunity to share that, and then we'll find out how they can find you.
Yeah. What I discovered is that the only thing that matters in the end is love. That's it. Love is what's
Amen to
there in
that.
the end.
Yeah.
Love is the answer to every question. It does not matter what the answer or the question is. It is always love. And if you can present yourself with love, I have had trying relationships with people. And if I sit down and think about them and send them love, somehow it gets better. Even if
Yes.
I'm feeling like I don't like the person right
Yes,
now.
you're so right. I
Yes.
wish I had time to tell you a story. This might cut off, but I have this gratitude journal, and I
Mm,
speak well of people in it, even
yeah.
when it's challenging and the relationship's
Yes.
trying. But I notice on the day, literally the day I do it regarding
Hmm.
that specific person, our interactions are better. So it
Yes.
makes a difference.
That is my
So
experience.
yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. And how can listeners find you, and tell them a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So you can find me at naturallymb.com. So MB for Mary Blanchard, my name. And so I love to use essential oils, pure from doTERRA, which